Hey everybody, welcome to the Jazz Architect. Today we're talking about the language of AI. 10 terms everyone should know. One of the funny things about almost any field is that once you get deep into it, you realize it has its own language. Art has its own language. Jazz has its own language. Business, medicine, law, education, and technology, they all have their own language. And when you know the language, it makes perfect sense. But when you don't know it, the conversation can sound pretty funny from the outside. In art, someone might say negative space. And a person outside the field might think that means something bad, when it really means the empty space around or between objects that helps shape what we see. In jazz, we might call a musician a cat, and someone outside the music may think we're talking about an animal like my mom. Over the years, I've heard people misunderstand musicians' language in the funniest ways. You never know what you're going to hear and how people use those words. That is why terminology matters. AI has its own language too, you know. Words like prompt, model, token, training data, hallucination, neural network, and agent. They get used all the time. But if we do not understand what they mean, we may misunderstand the whole conversation. So first, what is AI? We've been talking about that in the prior episodes, but a little review. AI is a machine system that can perform tasks that seem to require human intelligence. Important word here, seem. Hello. These tasks may include recognizing patterns, answering questions, making predictions, helping with decisions, or generating content. Here's a way to picture it. Think of AI like a car. A car has many parts: an engine, wheels, headlights, seats, and interior. Sometimes the interior is leather. Sometimes it's velvet. Yes, I've seen interior, velvet, seats, and the outside of a car in Doha, Qatar. You never know what you're going to get, but they all make up the parts of the car. AI works the same way. AI is the whole vehicle. Machine learning, generative AI, neural networks, tokens, and agents are just some of the parts under the hood. Today we are popping the hood and looking at those parts. All right. Our second term, machine learning. What is that? A simple way to understand it is older computers mostly followed rules. I remember when my dad brought home an IBM computer and showed my brother and I how to use it and taught us DOS. Anybody out here remember DOS? That was a world of commands, rules, and exact instructions. I did not take to it that much. My brother did. That older style of computing was like saying, here's the rule book. Follow these steps exactly. Machine learning is different. Instead of giving the computer every single rule, we give it examples and data so it can recognize patterns. That reminds me of music. Some students learn by reading music, studying rules, following the page carefully. Other students learn by listening to recordings over and over until they start to hear the language. They notice phrasing, rhythm, feeling, and patterns. Machine learning works more like the second student. It studies examples, finds patterns, and uses those patterns to make predictions, recommendations, or decisions. Term number 3, training data. The next term is training data. Training data is what an AI system learns from. It may include information, examples, images, text, sounds, or patterns that help the system figure out how to respond. This matters because the quality of the data affects the quality of the answer. Think about it like this. Someone gives you a phone number and tells you to make an important call. You dial the number, but it is the wrong number. You still made the call, but you were working with bad information. So the result was not that useful. But if someone gives you the correct number, now you can reach the person you are trying to contact. Training data works the same way, except on a massive scale. We're not talking about a phone number. We're talking about millions, billions, or even trillions of pieces of information. If the data going in is limited, biased, outdated, or incorrect, the output can be affected. So training data matters because what goes into the system helps shape what comes out. Number 4, generative AI. The term generative AI is important. Everybody's talking about it today. This is the hot topic term today. Generative AI. Why? Well, because it can generate text, images, music, lesson plans, emails, business ideas, workshop materials, and even more. I remember years ago thinking, one day we will probably be able to create pictures, music, and ideas just by describing what we want. Well, we're pretty much there now. You can go to an AI platform of your choice, type in something, and boom, out it comes, almost right in front of you. If you want to create a red horse from the planet Zezron from 10 billion years in the future, you can actually see what it may look like on the screen. Now, whether that red horse looks good or not is another question. But the point is, the tool can generate something from your words. That is why it's called generative AI. It generates content. But the key phrase is, you know how to use the tool. You have to know how to use it. Generative AI can make work faster and easier, but it still needs human judgment, taste, direction, and editing. The machine can generate, but the human still has to guide. Number 5, prompt. The next term is prompt. A prompt is the instruction, question, or request you give to an AI tool. In simple terms, it is how you ask the machine for what you want. Prompting may sound new, but the idea is actually old. Parents have been saying this forever. Ask for what you want. If you do not ask, you will not get it. But here's the important part. If you ask and it's not clear, you may get something close, but not exactly what you wanted. For instance, my son loves ice cream. If he says, "Dad, I want some ice cream," and I bring him any kind of ice cream, oh boy, there's going to be big trouble. Because what he really meant to say is, I want vanilla ice cream with Oreos, chocolate chips, Starburst, and M&Ms and some Reese's Pieces on the side. Oh, and don't forget the Twix. Now that is a very special order, and he means it in that order. And it probably also means a sugar emergency. But it is also a very clear, much better prompt. AI works the same way. If you give a vague prompt, you'll get a vague answer. But if you give clear details, context, and direction, the output usually gets better. Prompting is becoming a real communication skill. Clear input helps create clearer output. Number 6, LLM. This next term we touched on a little bit in the prior podcast. Stands for large language model. A large language model is a type of AI trained on huge amounts of text, so it can recognize patterns in language and generate responses. But here's the key. An LLM does not know things the way human beings know things. It does not have lived experience, memories, emotions, or judgments like a person. It predicts and generates language based on patterns it has learned from text. That matters because not every LLM is the same. One model may be stronger for writing and conversation. Another may be better for coding. Another may be better for research, images, music, business, education, or technical work. So choosing the right LLM is important. It is like choosing the right musician for a gig. You would not hire a drummer to play a piano concerto, and you would not hire a classical violinist to cover a funk bass line unless they really know the language. In the same way, the right LLM depends on the job. Number 7, token. What's a token? Let's keep it simple. AI does not read language exactly the way we as humans do. Instead of only saying full words and sentences, it breaks language into smaller pieces called tokens. A token might be a word, part of a word, a punctuation mark, a symbol, or a small piece of text. That is one reason long conversations, long documents, PDFs, and word limits matter. When you upload a long document and it takes time to process, the system is breaking the information into smaller pieces, analyzing those pieces, and using them to understand context. Think of tokens like space in a suitcase. The bigger the suitcase, the more you can pack inside. In AI, the more tokens a system can handle, the more text, context, or conversation it can work with at one time. Tokens matter because they help determine how much the system can read, process, remember, and respond to. Number 8, the neural network. A neural network is a computer system that helps AI recognize patterns in data. It is loosely inspired by the human brain, but it does not think, feel, or understand like a person. It learns relationships between pieces of information and uses those relationships to make predictions. Kind of like people do in relationships. A musical example helps here. A musician hears patterns all the time: harmony, rhythm, phrasing, melody, groove, and style. After listening to enough music, we start to recognize what makes something sound like blues, bebop, gospel, salsa, funk, or classical music. We may not stop every time and know every single rule, but we hear the pattern. A neural network works in a similar way, but with data. It looks at many examples and starts identifying relationships. This is also why your phone, computer, or Word document can make educated guesses, like while you're typing. If you write, "Thank you for your," the system may suggest time, or maybe help, or support, because it has seen those language patterns before. Modern AI is much more advanced. It's a more serious version of that idea. Instead of only predicting one word, it can generate full sentences, paragraphs, summaries, images, music ideas, and conversations. Number 9, hallucination. The next term is exactly this: hallucination. And this is one of the strangest AI terms I've heard. As a jazz musician, when I first heard the word, my mind went straight to Bud Powell's tune Hallucinations, also known as Voodoo. In jazz, a title like Hallucinations might suggest imagination, bebop, energy, or a musical world that moves so fast it almost feels unreal. But in AI, hallucination means something completely different. In AI, a hallucination happens when the system gives an answer that sounds confident, but the answer is wrong, made up, or not supported by reliable information. That is important because AI can sound right and still be wrong. For example, imagine I ask, "What time were you born?" You may be thinking October 21st, 2015. 12:23 a.m. Now, the computer may go back in your search history, your chat history, and find October 21st, 2015, but it doesn't know the exact time. Now, some of those movie fans out there may hear that date and start to think, wait a minute, is there a DeLorean flying around somewhere? But no, this is an actual thing. Sometimes in the search and chat history, it can find a lot of things, but not everything. And unless you give the system clear information, like we talked about with the prompt, it's going to make up something that sounds very reliable, but it's actually a hallucination. It's filling in the gap with something that sounds possible, or maybe just what it thinks kind of may be right, taking a guess. So hallucination reminds us to slow down, verify, and remember that AI is a tool, not an authority. Number 10, AI agent. Our last term is AI agent. An AI agent is a system that does more than simply answer a question. It can work towards a goal, use tools, search for information, organize tasks, and take steps in a process. This is a huge leap forward. A simple way to think about it is like a sports agent or a real estate agent. They are working on your behalf. You're giving them direction, but they are actually carrying out what needs to be done. You are not doing every small task yourself, but you are guiding the process, making the final decisions, and approving the outcome. AI agents work in a similar way. You might ask an agent to help research a topic, organize information, draft a plan, compare options, or complete several steps in a workflow. In some cases, you can even have multiple agents working on different parts of a larger task at the same time. That is why agents are becoming such a big topic in AI. They can help speed things up by handling several steps while you focus on the bigger picture. But the important point is this: the agent may do the work, but the human should still stay in charge. All right, everyone, we're about at the close of this podcast. But you know what? AI has a language. And once we learn the language, we move from confusion to clarity. The goal is not to become a machine. The goal is to stay human while learning how to use the machine wisely. Once again, I like to tell everyone, keep your eyes and ears open. Stay kind, be a groovy person. And as the jazz architect always says, being creative and innovative is the best way to start in your day. See you soon.